Hello. I think Germaine Greer has got a point in her recent uh, what's the word? Provocative statement about rape, and she herself was raped. I've been raped. I've friends have been raped. I think the problem these days is we live in an age of poor me. Poor me in Britain. You've only got to look at the Daily Mail and see the articles. Any sort of suffering that people go through, whether it's rape, whether it's cancer, whether it's the dog's died, the husband's died, everybody is submitting stories to the media. Poor me stories. Nobody suffers like I've suffered. And I think, and I've done it myself, and I think there is a tendency sometimes for over-indulgence of the things that we've suffered in life. And I think this is where she's got something to offer, Germaine, because she's challenging the idea that what's happened to you almost defines you and becomes who you are, in the same way as an illness defines you. I have chronic fatigue ME, and when I've been on websites and people introduce themselves, they introduce themselves according to the suffering. So they'll say, I'm Doris, I'm 62 and I have ME, I have diabetes, I've been raped, I've suffered from depression, and you've got all this catalogue of suffering, and that's how they introduce themselves to you. This is very, very common on all the websites for all things. People are sort of introducing themselves to one another through the things that they've suffered. And that's, instead of saying, I'm Jane or Barbara, and I actually love tapestry, and I happen to have ME, but my passion is tapestry, or my passion is reading. And it's how you define yourself. And we are living in the poor me age. Nobody suffers like me. And also the whole world must know about my suffering, right? So people are doing YouTube videos like this, telling everybody all about their suffering. They want the whole world to sympathise. And I've seen this a lot in the church when I was a Christian. People standing up and, they're thinking nobody suffered like me apart from Jesus, they'll think. But then they also think nobody suffered like Jesus. Christianity believes that nobody has actually suffered like Jesus. He has suffered more than any human being that's ever existed. This is the Christian belief. And you think of the atrocities that people have endured throughout the ages of war and mutilation and torture. But they are saying the Christ figure, nobody suffered like the Christ figure. And women so often are, and it's often more the women than the men that are saying it, nobody suffered more than I have. Whether it's pain, disability, loss, rape, anything. And I think it's about overindulgence of what we've gone through. And I've done it myself. I'm guilty of it. And I think it is actually, if you're going on about it and feel the need to go on about it, that to me says it hasn't been resolved. I mean, it's common sense, anybody can work that out. And I would say the same for me. It's probably not properly resolved. I still haven't come to terms with it in a way that would be more helpful to me. In just still getting angry about it, instead of looking at it from a different perspective. And what Germaine is offering us is a different perspective. She's looked at what's happened to her rape, in a different way to you and me, right? She has made a decision from the outset, right, whatever. I'm not going to dwell on this. These things happen. You know, these things happen. And rape can happen to anybody. It can be done by any man. Most men are capable of rape and they don't even know it. Rape is about power. It's about control. It's a lot about frustration, of feeling inadequate in some way. A man can have a bad day at work and being put down by his boss and then rape his girlfriend because he wants to feel powerful. A lot of it is about feeling powerful, feeling in control. And the nicest of men can rape women. The nicest of men can rape women. The idea that the rapist is some horrible fiend is not true. The fact is, a lot of men that rape women are very nice men. They're very nice, decent men that you see at the pub and you think he's really nice, this is a nice bloke. But for whatever reason, they express their anger, the need to control, their frustration through the violent act of rape. Because if you're feeling frustrated and put down in some way by anything or something, how are you going to get that back? How are you going to feel good about yourself, you see? And for some men, and often for many men, it can be rape is a good way for them of going about it because they've got the physical strength to do it. And this is something where they're in control. But to get back to the main thing, I think women do have a habit of dwelling on things, and we love to talk about our things that we go through, and we can never put things to rest. We have to keep on talking about things that happen to us and the injustice of it. I think men are better than women, but men are becoming more feminised. And as men become more feminised in their thinking, they are going to become the poor me people too. So they are going to be the people going on to programmes. And as they're beginning to do it, it's poor me this, poor me that. Remember all these people that are suffering terrible things, submitting articles and photographs to newspapers, and they're granting interviews with the media, with magazines. They are initiating all of this, you know. They want to be the centre of attention. They might say to you, I'm doing this because I want to educate people, I want to share this, I want to share that. But I wonder if that's the real reason. I often wonder if it's about the fact that they can't just put it behind them and say, well, it was bad, it happened, and let's move on. And I include myself in this because when it's about self-indulgence and it's about poor me, and we are living in the poor me age. And this is what Germaine is challenging. So right from the beginning of when something happens to you, you have to decide, how am I going to respond to this? You know, I don't have to have an interview with the Daily Mail. I don't have to contact Channel 4. I don't have to do anything like that. You know, I've survived a fire. I'm here. Let's just get on with things and put it behind me. But we're not living in an age like that. We're living in an age where everybody has to display all their emotions to everybody in the whole world. You know, you've lost your baby in a fire. It's terrible, I know. I feel sorry for you, but why do you have to tell the whole world? Why do you have to share all your grief visible online to everybody, and you're going and you're being interviewed by this person, you're interviewed by that person, and all emotions coming up again and again and again. And you know, there's a lot to be said for we British used to be known for our stuffy upper lip, and now we're being known as the trembling lip. We are always on the verge of tears, British now. We cannot control our emotions. We can't control our emotions. We have to let loose everything. And we have to ask ourselves long term, is this going to really help us? Because there are two schools of thought in psychology regarding trauma. One whereby you keep on regurgitating it and over again, and you never stop talking about it and dissecting it. and you keep talking about it, the idea it's supposed to bring healing. There's another school of thought whereby you just say it happened, it was awful, it was terrible, but I must move on. I must move on. And if you think of the atrocities that people have suffered, say in the Second World War, Holocaust survivors and all other people, a lot of these people coped by saying, right, I'm putting this behind me and I'm going to concentrate on continuing and making a life for myself and not dwelling on my experiences in a concentration camp. I'm going to move on. What often happens with these people is later on in life, when they retire, when they've got more time, they decide they're going to write about the past, right? They feel now is the time to do it. They've led a fulfilled life and they feel now is the time to share with the world what I went through at a concentration camp, right? But we don't get this in our society anymore. It's as soon as something happens to us, we're onto the newspapers. And it's poor me, poor me, poor me, crying, crying, crying. We are continually upsetting ourselves, and you have to say, are we allowing ourselves to heal and get over things? I was amazed, this friend of mine, she was raped by a good friend of hers. But this was only something that she told me after I'd known her a long time, but then after she told me, we just moved on to other subjects. We didn't dwell on it. I mean, she didn't go to rape crisis. She didn't do any of these things. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these things, but I'm saying in the old days, people just put things behind them and got on with life. And that's that. Terrible things do happen to people. And I'm annoyed with myself for allowing myself to dwell on things that really I should have put to bed a long, long time ago. And we wonder how much are we really being honest with ourselves. We're making excuses. We're saying we want to tell people so they'll know. Why must they know all about your suffering? What is it? Why do we have to let the whole world know that your husband has died from cancer? Why do you have to tell everybody? I know it sounds rude, this question, but it's a good question to ask yourself. Why do you have to tell everybody? You're not the only person that's lost your husband to cancer. You're not the only person whose baby's died. But why do you have to be the centre of attention? And this is another thing, it's about being the centre of attention. Everybody in this world wants to 15 minutes of fame because of videos, because of YouTube, because of everybody's out for a story. The media's looking for a story. They want you to ring in and tell you all your pathos, because pathos, agony and tears and everything sells. It sells newspapers now, it sells magazines. And there's a lot of money to be made. Your pathos can sell books. You can make a lot of money from your suffering, to be perfectly honest. I mean, the books that are written, they're actually fiction, but they are convincing and they're told as the truth, but it's not the truth. But it's so well written, you wouldn't know. And so there is a lot of... people do love to hear the poor me the stories, the overcoming suffering stories. And I always welcome Germaine Greer comment on anything. I think she's got a lot to offer because she gives us a different way of looking at things which nobody else will state. And it's very important, rather than just reject outright everything that she says and just say, oh, it's offensive, just stop and think about what she said and say, is there anything in what she's saying that has some degree of truth in it, right? Is there something that she's saying that I can learn from? You see, and why are we always following the trends of what we're supposed to be thinking and feeling? And this is what else she's saying. She's saying you don't necessarily have to think like that. You choose how you respond to something that's happened to you. You can choose by strength of mind to say, you know, I was gang raped, but I'm going to move on, and I'm just going to cut that out. I'm going to slot that in my mind, put it aside, and I'm not going to dwell on it anymore. It's behind me now, and it's time to move forward. And there are many people that do it, and do it successfully. Some psychologists would argue that it will damage a person, that if you put things in a box, put it away, that it will damage you. But this is not true. This is only a school of thought. It's not the truth. Right? Many people do put things in boxes and forget and say, right, no more, behind me. Other people can't put it in a box, and they have to keep talking and talking and talking about it. Right? You have to make this decision, and you have the freedom to make the decision. This is what Germaine is saying. Yes, I've been raped, but I can now isolate that and not dwell on it, not even think about it, not even talk about it, nothing. Just put it behind me. It's happened. That's it. And you're saying this is cold and clinical. But there's another way of looking at that and saying, no, it's not cold and clinical. What it's doing, it's your way of managing trauma. And there is no evidence, conclusive evidence, that it's totally bad for you. There are different schools of thoughts by psychologists. Some will say it is bad for you to do that. Others will say, well, no, for some people it actually works. And they just get on with life, and that's that.